Something interesting and more than a little frustrating happens to our hair after age 50. The hair we relied on for most of our lives quietly stops cooperating. The cut that always worked suddenly feels heavy. The color we've had for 20 years starts to feel dull and flat. And maybe even the way we style it starts to feel a little bit outdated. I'm actually at that point this moment. Most people think the solution is something, big, something dramatic, cut it all off. Maybe I should grow it long. Maybe I should go completely gray. But in my experience, the real shift is much simpler. Your hair after age 50 doesn't need reinvention, but it does need a strategy because everything changes. Hello, my friends. I'm Sharri Harmel, and this is your next chapter where we talk about creating a life that feels intentional, feels grounded, and deeply your own, especially in midlife. And today we're talking about something surprisingly powerful in that process, and that is our hair. Because our hair is never just hair, right? It shapes our face, it shapes how we see ourselves. I think in many cases, our hair is our identity. Our hair, though, is deeply connected to how we feel about ourselves. I get that all the time. And after age 50, it kind of has to take, we think it has to take a second seat, or we stop thinking we can do anything about it. And I'm going to change that today. I'm going to have you think about what else you can do. Speaking of hair identity, I remember, gosh, I think I was in the seventh grade and I had this long, thick blonde hair. Didn't think anything of it, right? Until one of the girls in my class, and it was a slightly mean girl moment, said to another girl, "Oh, that Sharri, she would be nothing without her hair." And suddenly I thought, maybe I do have pretty hair. Now, fast forward several decades, and sometimes it looks pretty grim, honestly. But maybe you were the woman with the long hair or the girl with the long hair, and now, it's not quite as thick as it used to be. We carry whatever that identity was that we had or that we acquired when we were young. We carry that forward. I know I did. And, the big issue is that things can change over time. And sometimes our hair or how we deal with our hair simply hasn't caught up with who we are. It's like wearing an outfit that you loved at 35 and still wearing it at 65 doesn't work. It's not wrong, but something feels slightly off. So let's talk about what happens to our hair in midlife. Texture changes. Gosh, and sometimes it's having babies. I think the hair on the back of my head suddenly became crazy curly after the birth of my daughter. She was my last child. But I mean, it wasn't like it was all over, which I would have loved. I always wanted curly hair. It's right down the middle of the back of my head. Totally bizarre. So our hair changes. Our hair becomes finer often. Sometimes it starts to fall out, so it feels thinner. Sometimes it gets frizzier. I know my hair is much frizzier, goofy frizzy as I've aged. Most of the time, though, our hair becomes drier and duller. And, that's something that we need to address. Now, most hair commercials and beauty videos are focused on young hair, right? We never see women our age twirling about and flipping their hair and whatnot because our hair is just not what it used to be. At 25, also, we tend to, not spend so much time on our hair. When I was 25, I don't even think I put rollers in my hair. I certainly never, might be my age, but I certainly never blew dry my hair. It was wash and go, and it looked fantastic. Well, now it requires a bit more work. And if you're like me, you're probably thinking, do I use hot rollers? Do I use those crazy wands where you can both blow dry your hair as well as curl it? Do I use heatless curls? The list just goes on and on and on. And yet your hair gets thinner, gets drier, gets frizzier as the years pass. So we're going to dive into products today. And I should say up front, absolutely none of these products am I an affiliate or do I receive any compensation for. They don't even know I'm alive, other than I'm a customer who buys every once in a while. But our hair requires more attention, just like the skin on our bodies and the skin on our faces. So I also want you to remember that what works on my hair and what works on my scalp may not work on yours. It could be budget. It could be the kind of hair you have. It could be whether or not you color your hair. It could be your ethnicity, all of these. So we have to make tiny adjustments, just like our tiny habits that suit us, right? Suit us. First is color. To go gray or not. I've chosen to not go gray. I'm very white through the center here, but the rest of me is like this dull, taupey, dishwater, sort of dull gray, muddy gray hair. Not attractive. Now, I have a friend, Lisa, who has the most beautiful hair, and she let it all go gray, and it's absolutely beautiful. Beautiful color. If I had that color, I would be comfortable going gray, but I don't. So you have to kind of figure out what it is that you want. Also, if you had really dark hair as a young woman, then the gray is just super noticeable. And so the question is, how do I see myself? Can I see myself with the gray hair, which is going to be very light and may not go with your skin, or do I keep coloring it? Do I keep coloring the roots? These are all kinds of questions that you have to, address. I do highlights. In fact, I just had it colored yesterday. I desperately need a haircut, but I just had it colored yesterday. And I do highlights because it kind of blends in with the gray. So the gray can work its way through and not be super noticeable. I used to go really, really light. Actually, when I was in Paris, the hairdressers in Paris actually convinced me to let it go darker and have more dark. And you could probably see it how it's different colors in there. The highlight is not one color, it's multiple colors. And one of them is actually much darker than my hair. So the question that people often have is, can I highlight myself versus going into a hairdresser? I don't know about you, but I tried that during COVID and it was a disaster, absolute disaster. And part of it is if some of you highlight, you're just taking pieces and that's very hard to do on yourself. But you might have a friend who's really good at it. So all over color, though, as we all know, is easier to do at home. It's mostly the question of what color works best for you because your skin changes. Not only does your hair change as you age, but your skin changes, the skin color, the luminosity of your skin, the glowiness of your skin, and the thinness or thickness of your skin actually changes as you age. And so consequently, does your hair color still work with your skin color? Because it should always complement, right? Always complement your skin because this is what people see. This is what people focus in on. And so your hair has to complement this. Now, when it comes to cut, you do what suits you. Okay. For me, I like to pull, as you've all seen, I like to pull my hair back into a ponytail quite often. And so I can't go real short. I also can't do bangs because I have a scar right here that causes everything to go one direction. So you might have a colic, something of that sort. So you have to decide. And bangs means you've got hair in your face. So how comfortable are you with that? I still have to get my hair texturized because I have very fine hair, but I have a lot of hair. And unless the hairdresser provides some various texture in the cut, it looks like a big old heavy hat, let me tell you. because one of the things that comes naturally at youth is hair movement. I see it with my granddaughters. I even still see it with my daughter, who's got beautiful curly auburn colored hair. There's movement. Everything's still moving around. And as we get older, which I think is why we don't show up in hair commercials, our hair doesn't have as much movement. And therefore, the cut that we have often has to bring in the movement that we don't naturally have anymore. So I wanted to show you though brushes. Brushes are important. In the past, I had this brush. It is, I think it's a natural bristle. It's a round brush. You can see just how old it is. Brushes are expensive. Good brushes are expensive. And I have to say, spend the money because a good brush is really important for your hair. This brush I probably have had, oh gosh, maybe 15 years. I mean, believe it or not. So when you think about how much the brush costs and you bring that out over 10, 15 years, carry it forward, you see that the brush actually isn't that expensive. The ones that you'll buy at with the cheap brushes with artificial or synthetic bristles actually can harm your hair. They're cheap, they're great to travel with, but they can harm your hair. Recently, though, I changed up. Decided to splurge, and it was actually right about the time of my birthday. And that brush is, oh gosh, what is it called? La Bonne Brosse. So it means the good brush or the pretty brush, something like that. Good, actually, good brush. These are made in France. They're very expensive, but you go on and answer a few questions, and they will tell you what number you need to purchase. The one thing about this brush that I think is so, so cool is it's good for your scalp. And you may say, why is a scalp that important? Because that's where your hair comes out of. And so maintaining our scalp is just like maintaining the skin on our faces. You have to exfoliate. These brushes naturally do that. The one thing they tell you with these brushes is not to get them wet. So it's not a brush that you can use if you like to wet brush your hair after you wash your hair. I have loved this brush. It's gentle on the scalp, but actually starts to feel like almost like a scalp massage, which I think is great. And scalp health is so, so, so important, like I said, as we start to age. Now, over the past few years, I've been experimenting with products because my hair is getting drier and drier and drier and frizzier and dull. So it probably looks pretty good right now just because it was colored yesterday, but sometimes it only takes a couple of weeks and it is completely dull. Now, I'm going to show you a wide cross section of products. Some are expensive, some are much more affordable. So you decide what you can do. So the first one that I think has generally shifted my hair is a brand by the name of Shampoo. Shampoo is, again, I believe this is a French brand, and it's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. It takes a while to get to you, but it's actually fantastic unless you're in France. Shampoo has now several, not several, but I would say two or three different shampoos and conditioners. I use the one that is actually moisturizing. This one says formulated for dry, difficult, or damaged hair that longs for moisture. I would say that's me. But I also think it's cool because it talks about how the shampoo is inspired by the principles of Ayurveda with a blend of modern, I can't pronounce it, trichology and active botanical formulas to make your hair its natural best. I love this brand. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. It's expensive, but I have to say you'll use a tiny amount. So in the shampoo, I use probably a dime size, and I have a lot of hair. I use about a dime size portion, add a little bit of water, and then put it on wet hair, and it's great. The other thing that shampoo makes, which I think is really, really great, is, and that's what was in this container, is their serum. And it's called Pita Growth Serum by Shampoo for thicker, fuller, and stronger hair. And this is something you put in dry when your hair is dry, and you separate your hair like two apart, and you just put a few drops in and kind of moisturize it in. I can't speak for this yet because I haven't used it long enough, but a number of women have said it helps the amount of hair loss that they're experiencing. And right now it's spring. And if it's spring, any seasonal change, I think we have more and more hair fallout, and which makes me a little paranoid at this point. So I'm trying the serum. I think it's well worth it. Again, you're using a tiny amount on a daily basis. This is a daily. The other thing shampoo makes is actually a weightless hair oil. Comes in a little bottle like this, and I use it on the days I don't wash my hair. I use it on the ends, and I just put a little bit of this oil in my hand and I scrunch it up. You don't want to put so much that your hair looks greasy, but just a little bit to help the dryness because everything gets dry as we age. Now, if you don't like shampoo, Kerastase also makes one that a number of people have recommended. It comes in this really big bottle, which I think is kind of ridiculous, but it's the only size you can buy this, and it's a hair elixir. Again, one little squirt and put it on the ends of your hair. Or if you're like me and you like to pull your hair back in a ponytail, put it on the end of your ponytail just to provide a little bit more moisture. When I get out of the shower, though, so I shampoo and then typically I squirt on some repair leave-in conditioner. This is one that was recommended to me by a hairdresser. I think it's great. It's called Xenogen, and I will put everything down below. And it's leave-in. Just don't overdo it, and don't do the roots of your hair, or your hair will look rather greasy. The one I like because I color my hair is called Pureology, and it's color fantastic. Again, this is a leave-in hair conditioner, which, good Lord, when I was young, I would have never needed, but now I need it because all of this gets really dry. And this is like day two, so you can see what happens as the days progress after I wash my hair. Now, if shampoo is a little bit too expensive for you, this is another brand I have really liked. It's Goldwell's Just Smooth, and I use the Just Smooth because I find everyone gets frizzy as they age. Now, I can't say that's true about Asian hair. So if any of you Asian gals can let us know in the comment section, but everyone else, we get frizzy. It's Just Smooth is actually great. They make a shampoo and a conditioner. I've used that. This one's almost empty, and I like that one too. Another product I like is Redken, and this one you can actually buy. I think you can buy all Just Smooth and this one both on Amazon if you're so interested, or in your drugstore. It's Redken and it's called All Soft. I have used up the shampoo, but this is the conditioner. The shampoo bottle is a little bit red colored, and that's another one I have really, really enjoyed. What else? I'm just trying to think. There is a British company I tried, Philip Kingsley. It's now with the tariffs and whatnot. If you're in the US, the tariffs have made everything complicated if you like to shop outside of the US. So I have not purchased anything from outside of the US other than shampoo. And shampoo actually does a good job of getting it into the US without charging extra tariffs. I don't know how they do that. Philip Kingsley, I don't know about, but it's a good product, really good product. Okay, now on to tools. Tools. I talked about the brushes. I guess I should have called those tools, but I jumped into brushes right away. Years ago, I tried something called the dry bar, and lots of companies make them where it's both a hair dryer, and a curling iron. And I loved it for about 3 days, a week maybe. And because it actually gave me nice body at the top of my head and it was easy. And I thought, this is wonderful. But this, for me, anyways, dried out my hair, like to the point of straw. So, so that had to go bye-bye. What I use instead, you all will think I'm absolutely crazy because this is so old school, is Velcro rollers. Okay. Now, not all Velcro rollers are created alike. Is that the word? You can, and if those of you who have long hair, I suggest you get the bigger ones. If you have shorter hair, you can get smaller ones. I love these darn things. And I say they're not all created equal. That was the phrase that I was looking for, because sometimes you'll get one that your hair sticks to and you cannot get your hair out of it. If that's the case, slowly pull your hair out and throw that roller away. It never loosens up. So, anyways, what I do is after I wash my hair, I let it air dry till it's almost completely dried and just slightly damp. And then I put in my Velcro rollers. And I actually put them, I think I can show you, I put them all over my head. So I will put them like this. My daughter laughs because she sees me sometimes on FaceTime. And then I use these little clips because otherwise they slide down. I put them all over, okay? All over my head and around my face, and then I take the hair dryer and I just do a little bit of heat. And then I leave these in while I'm having my coffee, my morning coffee. And sometimes I get busy. I get on the computer and I start writing on Substack and I forget. And all of a sudden I realize the rollers have been in my hair for an hour, hour and a half. But these work. These are simple. I can travel with them. I've used them for years. Now, I slept on my hair, but if you saw my hair when I actually washed it and used these rollers, you would see it adds a lot of body, which that's something we need. Again, body and movement kind of work in together in conjunction. Now, I have tried, and some of you are probably much, much better at this than me, the heatless, the wraps that you wrap your hair around and you can actually sleep on them and whatnot. A lot of people absolutely love them. I'm not coordinated enough to be able to get those in my hair. I cannot for the life of me figure out how to use them. They would probably be wonderful. But again, if any of you are using them, tell us in the comment section how to use them. One of the things that I noticed while spending time in Paris all those years is that many women over 50, at least what I saw in Paris, really approach their hair differently. They don't chase the trends. I call it refine. And I think it aligns with the way they dress off also, but their colors become softer. Sometimes, at least in America, and I also see this in the UK, women will try to like almost shock you with hair color, really blonde or really black or an assortment of colors in between. But think about softer because we need softness to kind of help what's going on here, right? But in Paris, and that was, like I said earlier, the hairdresser actually convinced me to bring down the brassiness of my hair on the highlights. And I think I'm much more comfortable with it at this point. Does it look like it did when I was 25? I'll put a picture down below. No, it doesn't, but it still feels like me. And I think that's what's really, really important. So, if you're in this moment with your hair, a few questions that can help you is ask yourself, does my hair reflect the woman I am now? Okay, not the woman I used to be, not the life I used to live. So I used to play a lot of tennis. And so I had to pull my hair back. So I'm struggling, as an example, thinking about, should I get a bob? A bob means I can't pull my hair back in a ponytail, but I don't play tennis anymore. So do I need to pull my hair back in a ponytail? I don't, those are the questions. And then on the color, is this color helping my skin or is it working against my skin? And maybe the most interesting question of all is, am I keeping this hairstyle because I love it? Or am I keeping it because I've always had it? I'm working on that one right now. So, hair, might seem like a small thing. This might have felt like a silly video to you, but small shifts in even something as simple as our hair can actually help us to move into our next chapter more powerfully, more ourselves, and more comfortable with the women that we are now, because it's the hair we have now, right? And I think that that's why it is so important to explore how we take care of our hair as we age. There's not a lot of information about that. Like I said, the advertising is focused on the young 25-year-old who's got hair blowing in the wind, right? I'd love to hear from you. What are your hair struggles that you're dealing with? Have you found any products, either the ones I've mentioned or some of the other ones that I haven't brought up today that you think the rest of us should give a try? Or if you have entirely different kind of hair as me, maybe ethnically you're African American or Indian or something of that, or Hispanic, and your hair is entirely different than mine, share, because I think our hair, regardless of our ethnicity, is super important to us, how we feel about ourselves, our identities, our self-esteem. So, anyways, that's all for now, and remember that the goal at our age isn't about, coming up with an entirely new identity or recreation. It's really, how do we edit the woman that we are today, the one that, has this whole long library, this book, so to speak, of life experiences. So, all for now. I shall see you next week. A biento.